Hello everyone, so this week we are ordering fractions, decimals and percentages. So fractions, decimals and percentages. So let's just remind ourselves of what this means. So take 64 hundredths as a fraction. What is that as a decimal? It will be 0.64. Because there's two decimal places, the 4 is in the hundredths column. The 6 is in the tenths column. So 0.64 is 64 hundredths. As a percentage, 64 out of 100 is 64%. So for task 1, you need to use the symbols more than, less than, equals. How we've remembered it at school is we've always said that the crocodile eats the bigger number. So 64%, is it more or less than 0.46? So 64%, what is that as a decimal? So 64% is 0.64 and 0.46, so the largest value is 0.64 or 64%. B, 0.96, is it more or less than 97 hundredths? So what is 0.96 in hundredths? 96 hundredths. So the biggest value is 97 hundredths, and so on. Oh, let's do C. So 3/5, is it more or less than 35%? So here we need to find the equivalent fraction in hundredths to be able to compare it to percentages. So what is the equivalent fraction of 3/5 in hundredths? What do I multiply 5 by to get to 100? How many 5s are in 100? Well, I know that 5 times 2 is 10, so 5 times 20 is 100, which means I've got to multiply the numerator by 20 as well. So 3 times 20 is 60. So 60 hundredths is the equivalent of 60%. So now I can compare because they're both in percentages. So 60% is greater than or more than 35%. Remember, the crocodile eats the bigger value. So 60% or 3/5 is bigger than 35%. Question 2. Okay, draw lines to estimate the positions of the fractions. So 9%, you're going to draw the line to just before the 10%. 9/10. What is 9/10 as a percentage? Well, before we work out what the percentage is, we need to find the equivalent fraction in hundredths. So what do I multiply 10 by to get to 100? 10 times 10 is 100, so multiply the numerator by 10 as well. 9 times 10 is 90. So 9/10 is 90 hundredths, which is the equivalent of 90%. So I need to draw a line from 9/10 to 90%. 0.99. What is 0.99 as a percentage? Well, it's 0.99 is 99 hundredths. 99 hundredths is the equivalent of 99%. So draw a line from 0.99 to just before 100%. And then 19%, you're going to draw a line just before the 20%. If you can't draw lines, write your answer in the box there. Okay, question 3. Write the fractions, decimals and percentages in order from the smallest to the largest. Okay, so we need to make sure they are all in either they're all fractions or they're all decimals or they're all percentages. Once they're all the same, you'll be able to order them really easily. So what is 7/10 in hundredths? let's find the equivalent fraction of 7/10 in hundredths. So 10 times 10 is 100, so multiply the numerator by 10. 7 times 10 is 70. So 7/10 is 70 hundredths. We've already got 13 hundredths. What is 21%? 21% in hundredths. So 21% is 21 hundredths. And 0.9, what is 0.9 in hundredths? So 0.9 is in the tenths column. So 0.9 is the equivalent of 9/10. 9/10, the equivalent fraction in hundredths, is 90 hundredths. Okay, now everything is in hundredths. I can easily compare them. So the smallest amount is 13 hundredths. So that's the smallest. I'm going to cross it off as I go along. The next one is 21 hundredths. I'm not going to write 21 hundredths though, I'm going to write 21%. Cross it off. The next one is 70 hundredths. So here it's written as 7/10. Cross it off. And then the next one, 0.9, is 90 hundredths. 0.9. There you go. I've ordered it from the smallest to the largest. Try and do questions B and C independently. So that's task 1. Task 2. Open in Word so that all the boxes line up correctly. So, task 2, question 1. These fraction decimals and percentages are in descending order. So descending means that they're starting from the largest to the smallest. Okay, tick the fractions, decimals and percentages that could fill the gap. So I'm guessing there is perhaps 1 or 2 possible answers, maybe 3 possible answers, I'm not sure. So, descending order. So 99% is the equivalent of, so you've got 99% first, which is the equivalent of 99 hundredths. Then you've got 89 hundredths, and then you've got 0.7, which is 0.7 is the equivalent of 7/10 or 70 hundredths. Oh, 70 hundredths. And then the next one is 0.5, which is 5/10 or 50 hundredths. So we're looking for an amount here that is between 70 hundredths and 50 hundredths. So what could go in that gap there? So I'm looking here at 0.6. 0.6 is the equivalent of 6/10, which is the equivalent of 60 hundredths. So 60 hundredths could definitely go in there because it's between 70 hundredths and 50 hundredths. Is there another one there that could go in that gap? Well, 0.78 is 78 hundredths. That couldn't go in there because it's greater than 70 hundredths. So it's not that one there. 51% is 51 hundredths. That also couldn't go in there. Oh, actually, it could go in there. What am I saying? It could go in there. So your 51 hundredths could go in there because it's between 70 hundredths and 50 hundredths. So that could be an answer. So we've already got 0.6 because we know that's 60 hundredths. And then we've also got 51%. Could 3/5 go in there? So what is 3/5? What's the equivalent fraction in tenths first? So times it by 2, times the numerator by 2. So 3 times 2 is 6. So 3/5 is the equivalent of 6/10. And then what's the equivalent fraction in hundredths? So times it by 10, times it by 10. So 6 times 10 is 60. So 60 hundredths. So 3/5 is the equivalent of 60 hundredths. So that too could also go in there because it's less than 70 hundredths, but it's greater than 50 hundredths. So 3/5 could also go into that box. We know that 0.6 can go in there already because that's 6 tenths or 60 hundredths. So 4 tenths. Could 4 tenths go into that box there? 4 tenths is the equivalent of 40 hundredths. No, 40 hundredths can't go in there because it doesn't lay between 70 hundredths and 50 hundredths. 40 hundredths will be here, is the equivalent of 4 tenths. Brilliant, so that's question 1. Question 2. Tommy scored 40 out of 50 on a maths test. Aisha got 78% of the test correct. Aisha thinks she has done better because 78 is greater than 40. Do you agree with Aisha? Well, what is 40 50ths? Oh, 40 out of 50 as a percentage? Well, first of all, find the equivalent out of 100. So what do I do to 50? I times it by 2 to make 100, so times the numerator by 2. So 40 times 2 is 80. So 40 out of 50 on a maths test is the equivalent of 80 out of 100, which is the equivalent of 80%. Aisha got 78%. She thinks she's done better. Do you agree? What do you think? Write your answer here. Okay, question 3. Huan, Inija and Scott each started with 1 litre bottle of juice. Hua drank 0.55 litres. And Nija drank 59% of her juice. Scott has 4 tenths of his juice left. Who drank the most? And who drank the least? Well, 0.55 litres, what is that as a percentage? So 0.55 is the equivalent of 55 hundredths, which is the equivalent of 55%. So Huan drank 55%. Nisha drank 59%. Scott has 4 tenths of his juice left. So if he's got 4 tenths of his juice left, how much did Scott drink? Well, 6 tenths add 4 tenths equals 10 tenths, or a whole. So he's already drunk 4 tenths. Sorry, he's got 4 tenths of his juice left, which means that he's drunk 6 tenths. So 6 tenths is the equivalent of 60 hundredths, which is the equivalent of 60%. So that is Scott. So the question is, who drank the most and who drank the least? Show your workings out. Well done, everybody.